Welcome to Daily Devo. I'm Pat. Today we're going to talk about humility. In Philippians chapter 2, Paul is talking about humility. Now, humility is a really confusing word for us. I mean, what does it mean to be humble? Does it mean that I can't have confidence? Does humility mean that I have to be a doormat to others? Is humility a sign of weakness? Here's my definition of humility. It's a little bit longer. There's three parts to it, but humility is to understand who we are in relationship to God. Humility is to understand who we are in relationship to each other. And humility is to recognize our own brokenness. Humility is to understand who we are in relationship to God, who we are in relationship to each other, and to recognize our own brokenness. Let me explain. Humility is to understand who we are in relationship to God. When you and I begin to grasp how big and enormous and awesome God is compared to us, we cannot help but be humbled. Humility is to understand who we are in relationship to God. The second part, humility is to understand who we are in relationship to each other. I'm going to come back to in a moment. The third part, humility is to understand our own brokenness or recognize our own brokenness. How many of you are perfect? How many of you have never failed? How many of you have never made a mistake? See, every single one of us has our own brokenness. Every single one of us struggles with our own addictions. Maybe it's not chemical addictions, but it may be an addiction to gossip or slander or bitterness or anger or lust. We are all broken people. So humility to understand or recognize our own brokenness. But let me key in on that second part. Humility is to understand who we are in relationship to each other. Look what Paul wrote in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. He said, "Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others." Some translation says, put the needs of others in front of your own. See, in our society and culture, we talk a lot about having a high self-esteem. Paul flips this upside down in some ways and says, you know what you need to do is esteem others higher than yourself. What? See, this is why I often refer to Jesus' message as the upside down, backwards, inside out gospel, because it's upside down, backwards, inside out from what you and I mainly hear. Jesus said, if you want to be first, you have to be last. If you want to live, you have to die. And Paul is speaking into this upside down, backwards, inside out message saying, I'm not talking about having a high self-esteem. I'm talking about esteeming others higher than yourself. And so today in your relationships, whether it's with your spouse or your significant other or your brothers and sisters or your co-workers or your fellow students or the barista, would you live out this upside down, backwards, inside out gospel, this message that says it's not about high self-esteem, it's about esteeming others higher than yourself? Imagine if today you and I actually tried to outserve the people in our lives.